Shakespeare once wrote, "Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them." Terry Fox was not born great. In fact, it was the cruelest twist of fate imaginable that would eventually propel his name into the headlines and his memory into the pages of Canadian history. It's sometimes easy to forget that when Terry Fox began his marathon, he was just a very ordinary young man, barely out of his teens. The last thing he ever wanted to be was a hero.
He gave us a dream as big as our country. And I thought he did.
Well, I'll do a short little speech here before I carry on. I hope you can all understand me. I'll tell you shortly why I'm running across Canada and what happened to me. When I was 18 years old in Vancouver, BC, I had a pain develop on the right side of my knee.
It was an early start. We get up at 4:30, and Terry ran usually about 12 miles in the morning. It'd be 9 o'clock. And then he would stop, and we'd find a restaurant, or we'd have to deal with Doug's cooking. And Terry would eat as much food as he possibly could. And then he would sleep for the balance of the morning. He'd start running at 12 o'clock, and he'd run 14, 16 miles, depending on how he was feeling.
Absolute quiet of pre-dawn. And he'd wrap himself in his sleeping bag in the back of his van. Everyone was very, very quiet. And he'd drive to the place where he'd stopped the night before. And he'd get out slowly. And it would be dark and lovely and quiet. A moon shining. Farms around us. And he would run. It was a startling sight. It was almost a frightening sight because you could see it was hard. You could see that he was running, and it was an effort. There was nothing easy about it. But what also struck me was that he was alone. And I thought, is this what it's going to be like all the way across the country?
Of course, no one could ever have predicted that the Terry Fox Marathon of Hope would cast off its unpretentious start and become a phenomenon, the likes of which Canada has never witnessed, before or since. In the beginning, there was only the dogged determination of one Terence Stanley Fox. Looking back, it was a harebrained scheme. Terry with Doug as his sole companion.
The doctors thought something was wrong with his heart, but Terry wasn't going to say anything. Because I think what it came down to was we only got one life to live. I might die of cancer anyway. And Terry had decided this was what he was going to do.
I've trained as hard as I think you can train for it. Before Christmas, I ran 101 days in a row without taking a day off. Christmas Day was my first day off in 101 days. In that time, I ran with the flu, shin splints, bone bruises. You name it, I had it. And I ran through it at that time because I felt I had to build my confidence for my trip, and because I knew when I run across Canada, I'm going to encounter the same things.
With a few dollars of sponsorship money, Terry and Doug flew to Newfoundland, and on the 12th of April, 1980, the Marathon of Hope began.
This afternoon at 2:45 in St. John's Harbor, Terry Fox dipped his foot into the waters of the Atlantic Ocean.
Each and every day, Terry ran 26 miles, fighting against the bitter tail end of a Newfoundland winter. His artificial leg gave him problems. His stump would bleed. The pain was intense. On occasions, the dizzy spells and double vision would return, but he adamantly refused to take a day off.
One morning I woke up and I couldn't get out of bed, and that day they told me I had a malignant tumor and that I had to have my leg amputated in 4 days. And I decided after my year and a half of chemotherapy that I'd try and run across Canada and raise as much money as I could for the Canadian Cancer Society.
It was a remarkable performance by any standard. For Terry Fox, an intensely shy young man, it was outstanding. Yet the pressures of running the solitary campaign were intense.
This is not a motorhome that they were in. This is a van that they lived in, they slept in, they cooked in. The toilet was in the back.
And all the while, the less than overwhelming donations made Doug and Terry question what they were doing. But then came a small triumph. When Terry ran through Port aux Basques, Newfoundland, the 10,000 people who lived there did themselves proud and gave over $10,000. Up to that point, Terry aimed to raise $1 million from his run. But that day, as he headed for Nova Scotia, he was beginning to think big. A national goal of $1 for every person in the land.
And pretty soon, every night on the news, you could see Terry Fox and where he was. And communities started to want to have him visit.
What do you want most right now?
Right now, what do I want most? More money.
You're getting it, you're getting it.
Terry spent his 22nd birthday doing what he enjoyed most, running. And in Terrace Bay, on the shores of Lake Superior, he would be reminded once again of the reason for his marathon.
I'm crying now because there's somebody here right now who is going through the same thing that I went through. Exact same thing, and he's only 10 years old. And I had the most inspirational day of my life today.
Greg Scott was a little boy, 10 years of age, who had suffered the same cruel fate as Terry Fox. He affected Terry enormously, particularly when the terminally ill youngster was flown north from his home in Hamilton to cycle alongside him.
With Greg Scott there, 14 miles first thing in the morning was just easy. And then he did 12 more, got his day over with. That's what he was doing it for, the young kids who were dying of cancer.
It was on September 1st, 1980, that the end of the marathon came. Terry's mileage stood at 3,339. He'd run for 142 days with only one day off. 10 miles outside of Thunder Bay, the Terry Fox Marathon of Hope was over.
I was coughing and choking and had pain in my neck and my chest. And I did 3 more miles and I decided I had to go see a doctor. And it was discovered then that originally I had primary cancer in my knee 3.5 years ago. And that the cancer had spread. And now I've got cancer in my lungs. And we got to go home and try and do some more treatment. But all I can say is if there's any way I can get out there again and finish it, I will.
As he drifted in and out of consciousness, he watched a hastily convened coast-to-coast network telethon that more than doubled the amount he had already raised. More importantly, the fund soon reached more than $24 million, realizing Terry's goal of raising $1 for every Canadian. 10 months, Terry Fox fought the disease that had made his name a byword for courage and commitment. Honors were heaped on the young athlete. He became the youngest ever recipient of the Order of Canada. But it was a cruel irony that someone who had single-handedly raised a sum equal to twice the Cancer Society's annual research budget could not benefit from his own efforts.
I think that by having some faith that God is there, that believing in heaven is something that will relieve me of that loneliness.
He died surrounded by love. The love of his family, all of whom were with him, and the love and prayers of the entire nation.
It would have been difficult to find anybody that summer who was not deeply affected by the death of Terry Fox. But his brave spirit would continue to inspire people everywhere. And his dream, which had become his legacy, would soon provide a national focus for fighting the disease, which had struck him down at such a young age.
I've said to people before that I'm going to do my very best to make it. I'm not going to give up, and that's true. But I might not make it, and if I don't make it, the Marathon of Hope better continue.
He kind of woke up at one point and looked at me and said, "You know, Coach, is what I did, is it going to have made a difference?" And I said, "Terry, I think it's made all the difference. You've given people a dream, and that dream people will keep alive."
Today, the Terry Fox Foundation is the keeper of the dream, each year organizing the Terry Fox Run.
1, 2, 3.
The idea came from Isidore Sharp, who wanted to turn his support for Terry's Marathon of Hope into a lasting legacy.
So I suggested to him, what if we hold a run in your honor each year? He said, that sounds okay.
The Terry Fox Run now takes place each year in more than 5,000 locations across Canada and around the world.
It's not just a fundraiser. Everybody here feels they can understand what Terry was all about.
He left such an indelible mark in all of us. You know, we knew though in our hearts that we would never forget him.
In a country reluctant to recognize its heroes, Terry Fox stands alone. But heroism was the furthest thing from Terry's mind. The epitaph he would appreciate is the hope that he still inspires.
He had a tremendous impact on all of us and on everybody who goes into the cancer clinic one day and gets told that you're going to be okay, and you're going to be okay because we've had funding and we've had research, and you know, that's important. Those are big words to hear.
He was a natural. He was going to raise $1 from every Canadian. He was not pretentious. He evolved and he grew, and there was a greater depth to him, and we responded to that.
If it doesn't work out, I've got to be able to accept it, and people have got to realize that good things and bad things happen in the world, and Terry Fox is somebody to try his hardest, and even though I died of cancer, my spirit didn't die, and I kept trying, and that should influence a lot of people as well.
If there's doubt and you're cold, don't you worry what the future holds. We gotta have heroes to teach us all to never give up on a dream. Claim the road, touch the sun. No force on earth could stop you run. When your heart bursts like the sun, never give up on a dream. Shadows fall.